Welcome, everyone, to this session of Authors in Conversation. I'm actually really excited because I've got Fleur Chambers with me here, and she's the person behind the Happy Habits app. Now, Fleur, I usually just get straight into books, but I want to find out about that app first. But just before we get into that, I also want to say that Fleur has published 2 books of her own already, and she's working on a compilation book as well. But let's start with the app, I reckon, Fleur.
That sounds great. Well, thanks for having me, Jane. It's lovely to be here on this beautiful autumn day. I'm watching the leaves on the trees fall with the autumn wind as well outside. So nice to be here. So I created the Happy Habit app as a way to support people to either start or deepen their meditation practice. So there's over 200 meditations, there's 9 courses, there's journaling, there's music, there's soon to be a sleep series on there. And it's a scientifically backed, spiritually informed framework that really helps you say yes to your entire life. So often we resist certain parts of our lives, or we get in the habit of hurrying through the hard times or chasing an imaginary point in the future where we're happy and all our troubles disappear. And so this app really helps you drop into the present moment and soften the I'll be happy when stories and drop into the wonder that's really here for you right now, even if your life doesn't feel perfect.
That's a really important tool, more now than ever, because I don't know what the statistics are, but every second person I talk to is stressed out of their brain and they're dissatisfied, they're unhappy, they're worried about the future. You put it so beautifully about just dropping into that place where, anything's possible, I guess. I better not put words in your mouth, but for me, I'm going, yes, thank goodness someone's done this.
Yeah. So I think even if we know intuitively that happiness isn't a destination in the future and that we can only be happy in the present moment, we still just chase. We still just tell ourselves these little stories. I'll relax when the kids are in bed. I'll practice more self-care when we've paid off a bit more of the mortgage. I'll take care of my health when I've lost some weight, or, whatever it is. We just have these little stories we tell ourselves that just take us away from this feeling of enoughness in the moment. And you know what that feeling feels like when you're like, actually, put my feet up, notice the change in seasons, have a cup of tea, and here in this moment, all is well. There might be dishes in the sink and a child's homework that's running late and whatever, but here in this moment, I can just soften and relax. And so that's what we're after.
Oh, that's a beautiful thing. And then I dare say your books are covering that territory as well, are they?
Yeah, so my first book was really a exploration into my experience healing from chronic pain. But I used the example of physical pain as a metaphor for any pain: divorce, illness, sick kids, emotional experiences, loneliness, whatever it was. So it speaks to the same thing. So in the app, there are 10 pathways for happiness. And so I walked through those 10 pathways in the book as a way of saying yes to your entire life, not just the good bits. And so the pathways are supposed to be a metaphor for neurological pathways that we strengthen through mindfulness and meditation, pathways that we actually have to walk each day because these things have to be more than just ideas in our heads. And pathways as in journeys. So the pathways are things like calm, compassion, gratitude, vitality, purpose, acceptance, perspective. And so the idea is that wherever you are, whatever's going on for you, there's a pathway that you can either explore in meditation, in life, within your own inner world, to move you from wherever you are to a greater experience of inner well-being.
Beautiful. And isn't that interesting, though? Those words are often heard, but I've never heard them contextualized in the sense of a pathway, because the point is a word is a word. It's the action and, of course, the meaning we put to the word, but the action we take to for want of a better word, operationalize the word to really bring it into being. That's a brilliant structure for a book. Honestly, you've nailed that.
Yeah, and it's actually interesting, isn't it, when you have a structure, structures help you feel safe. So when it comes to writing, having a framework really allows you to express creativity within the safety of the framework, and it allows the reader to feel safe too. We often think that structures constrain us, but they actually allow us to be free. And I was talking with someone once about the frameworks that I've created. They're as vast as the ocean. They're as vast as the universe. I mean, you could, on one of the pathways, you could practice for a year or a minute. Like, there's so much in a practice, isn't there? Like the practice of gratitude. You could practice that for 5 minutes. You could commit to that as an intention for an entire year or an entire lifetime.
Indeed. So that's your first book. What was the second one based on?
So, flowing on from that is I took one of the pathways, which was confidence, and I explored this idea of wholehearted confidence. So, I'd written a course which 10,000 people had been through, and it was just really hitting for people. And it was about really challenging this idea that confident people have a firm handshake and a wide leg stance and speak more than listen and always know their next move and are focused more on the individual than the collective. And I was like, hang on, I think in this current climate, we need to change the way we think about confidence. We need to soften into the idea that actually confident people, they listen just as much as they speak. They're willing to change their opinions, to be influenced by others. They feel okay with uncertainty because coming through COVID, this is what we know, life is uncertain. But the biggest thing was that we've been taught that we need to eradicate our self-doubt and our fears of being an imposter and not being enough. We need to get rid of those things before we can feel confident. And so what I did was I challenged that, and I built a model that said, actually, if you soften into your humanity, if you soften into those shadows of self-doubt, of not enough, of imposter, and you allow them to be there without getting so pulled in, they'll actually have some wisdom for you. And so that's the most exciting message, I think, in the book, and the message that most people are feeling liberated by. It's this idea of, hang on, I can actually feel confident today, even with a level of self-doubt. That's just part of being human. We don't need to get rid of any part of ourselves. So I think that's the story that people are really grabbing onto in the book.
Well, what a relief of not having to get over those things that, yeah, just live your life. And now the compilation book. Tell me more about what's going on there.
So it really has been a beautiful journey. Book one was really exploring my own healing with a real intention to support other people. And then book two had a research group. So I worked with 50 people across 8 weeks, and they shared with me their learnings, and I put them in the book. So there were case studies. And I really started getting excited about this idea that I could bring other people in on the journey of sharing their stories. And so then book three came to me with, what if I could actually invite a group of people who'd always wanted to share their story but didn't have the means to become a published author? What if I could walk them through a process that I'd never been walked through myself, around meeting my self-doubt, around managing and softening into the imposter syndrome, about knowing how to access creativity, about knowing really what it took to be a good, inspiring writer? What if I could weave in my meditation expertise with my experience of writing? And so I created this program, which is called Meditate, Write, Celebrate. And there's 2 arms. And so the first arm is a deep dive into meditation, what it looks like to live an authentic life, and how you access the creative life force that lives within and around us. Then there's parts around working with the self-doubt, the judgment, the fear of being seen and heard. There's that part. And then the other path we walk is 2 rounds of professional structural editing. And then at the end, we celebrate where 17 people from all around the world have come together in creating this story. And so we're at the stage where people are beginning to write and they're working towards their first edit. So it's super exciting, and I feel really honored to be able to support people to normalize the vulnerability that comes with sharing yourself more authentically. And I think if more people were talking about that, more of us would be creative.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. When is the aim for that book to be out? Because I think that's going to be a great read as well.
Yeah, that's going to be out by Christmas.
Yes. Hey. Oh, those people, they'll be able to be giving some copies to family and friends. Oh, that is so good. So good. I can't commend you enough for helping people to do that. The sharing of our story. The first time I did that, that changed my life. Yeah.
Yeah. And did you feel supported or prepared? I felt a little caught off guard, I must say.
Well, I tell you what my background is. I worked as a public servant my whole working life up to the age of 52. Then I was made redundant, and it was back, 10 years ago now, a different labour market to what we have now. And 52-year-old women weren't really that employable, it turns out, because I applied for a stack of jobs, didn't get any. However, I had started to write a book a little bit, well, not a little bit before that, several years before that, because I had a little vision that when I got my daughter through year 12, I would branch out and do some coaching, because I'd been trained as a coach within the workplace. And I know how powerful it can be if we have a safe container for people to be able to just unpack their baggage and say what they need to say, and not at all in the way that you've done it. I wish I knew you back then. I would have been a partner. I would have made you as partner or something like that to do that side of things with me. But anyhow, long story short, I had a number of cathartic moments, including standing on stage and launching my book, and not planning to do this, but looking at my 14-year-old daughter and her 14-year-old friends and saying, what I want you girls to know is that there is nothing so broken, so shameful, or so unspeakable about you that you can't tell someone about it, and know that they'll still love you and remind you to love yourself. And actually, Fleur, it was the 14-year-old girl in here that needed to hear that the most. And at that very moment, I had a flash of insight about the fact that I had just written a book called Thrive in Midlife, with the view to opening a coaching practice, helping women through that phase. But my flash of insight was, I haven't been put on this earth to do that. I've been put on this earth to help people do that, that bit through sharing their story. So we aren't so far disaligned by any means, but just quite different ways of going about what we do. And to answer your question, yes, I guess I was taken aback. I guess I was kind of for a moment, who is this woman? And then I go, it's me. It's the me I never knew was there. I was the broken one. I was the one who didn't feel entitled. I was the only reason I was on that stage was I had no other options, no job, had to finish the book, had to get the business started, had to become more visible. And, now you can't stop me. I bet you weren't expecting an intermission. The fact is that I started blathering on when I was interviewing Fleur, because I was so taken with the amazing things that she's done. And I didn't want anyone to switch off because they think, oh God, this is dragging on. So I thought, I'm going to cut that stuff out and just get back to Fleur talking about how she can help people with the services that she has. So over to Fleur now. Yeah, I'd love to just know how this works. If so, because there'll be someone here now and going, oh, that Fleur, I got to get in touch with her.
Oh, that's lovely. Thanks, Jane. Yeah, downloading the app and beginning to listen and go on your own journey there. Following me on Instagram, and there's always sort of small, intimate ways of working with me. So at the moment, it's through writing the book. I imagine I'll do this again So yeah, just best to follow me on Instagram and yeah, download the app. But isn't that interesting when you say, when you're in the present moment, there's nothing wrong? And I feel like that's the same with the writer's journey. So often when people write memoirs or self-help books that have a flavor of their own healing, we begin thinking we're already healed. And I know that was the circumstance for me with my chronic pain book. I was like, yeah, I'm healed from that. I'm ready to write about it. And then every chapter, I was in the mud. I was in the weeds. Pain flare-ups, imposter syndrome, thinking I couldn't possibly write about something, a condition that I still had, massive flare-up after I launched the book. But none of that was wrong. It was all part of the journey. And I think now I look back on that book, actually, because I'm reviewing it in the context of teaching about it. And it's like, that was a moment in time. I wouldn't write that same book now. I understand my chronic pain very differently than I did 2 years ago, but that book is a moment in time and there was nothing wrong with it. It was perfect, even to the extent there's a whole chapter on an owl who came to visit and I've never seen the owl again. So, so had I written that book now, there wouldn't have been an owl chapter. And I just think that trusting in the process. And I remember saying to Karen, who we both know, publisher Karen, at the end of writing my first book, I was like, oh, and then I felt anxious, and then I felt exposed, and then I felt excited, then I felt purposeful. And she just looked at me and she said, yes, Fleur, it's called the writer's journey.
I love Karen. She's a wonderful woman.
So here we are thinking we're all special and we're the only people going through this vulnerability around sharing. But the truth is, it's just part of the process. And if only more people knew that they didn't need to get rid of the moments of anxiety, the fear of being judged, the wondering if their story was going to be worth it. And if people could surrender into the real aha moments like you did. So there you are, you're writing this book, you're on stage, you're talking to your daughter, and then suddenly you realize, actually, here it is. Here's the moment. It's me. And there's the moment of healing. And we all have a couple of those moments, don't we, when the writing process, and we're like, here we go. Here we go.
I'll share one other one. Thrive in Midlife, I was writing about my options for getting myself prepared to go through that phase versus my mother's options. And I say, of course, back in the day, they would automatically go to the doctor for a prescription. And my mum was one of those ladies many, many years later, it's a long incubation period, but who died of breast cancer. Now, in the book, I wrote these words, Fleur. I said, I'm grateful to the drug called tamoxifen because it gave my mother 5 extra years and it gave my daughter 1 year to know what it was like to have a grandmother. And frankly, when I wrote those words, if I hadn't have done any of the woo-woo work, as my husband calls it, I would have thought I was having a heart attack. But what was really happening was that my heart was opening. My heart was opening to the mother that I never bonded with, for reasons I won't go into, except it has to do with vanishing twin syndrome and being the survivor there. I never bonded with my mother when she was alive, but I bonded with her then, in that moment, not to mention my daughter, who also deserved to be bonded with from an open-hearted woman. And okay, so she wasn't a baby anymore. But since that point, I've completely bonded with important people in my life, not just those ones. So knowing how to bond, being brave enough to bond. Gosh, that book, if I never sold a single copy, it would still have been such a worthwhile exercise because I came out the other end a different person.
Yeah. And I love this idea that when we write, we send the universe a GPS of where we are. Here I am telling the truth about my mum and my daughter. I'm here. So now you can take me where I need to go. I'm ready. I'm open. And so it really is just telling the universe your coordinates, so the universe can then come in and give you exactly what you need. And what I've realized is there's just such a relationship between writing and meditation. It's effectively the same thing. You
Mm,
go on a journey,
mhm.
end up somewhere very different than you thought you would, and it's filled with self-discovery, with the energy of creativity, with opening the lines of communication with your body, your heart, and the natural world. And it has a ripple that
Mm.
allows you to actually start trusting in life. And
Mhm.
it's just so beautiful.
I might actually quote you on the writing being a GPS. I think that's great. I think that's gold. Look, Fleur, I can't thank you enough. I want everybody to go on and get the Happy Habits app and get your books. And I'm going to watch this space because I'm going to get that compilation book for sure.
Thanks so much, Jane. I've loved chatting to you, and thank you for all the amazing work that you're doing. I imagine your books have had a huge ripple for people who are wondering what's next, who are feeling a little older, a little more invisible, and that would have been a beautiful book for people to read, and for all the coaching and inspiring people to write. It's really, really beautiful.
Thank you, Fleur.